Hey everybody, this is your girl Coach G. I am your certified life and wellness coach with a master's in psychology and a PhD in life. And around here, we talk about all things life, love, and the pursuit of happiness because your healing, your growth, and your joy are not optional. It is your God-given right to have life and that more abundantly. Today, we're continuing our series on PTSD, and we're not talking about the clinical diagnoses, but the patterns, the traditions, the survival, and the deliverance that shape how we move through this world. And when I talk about patterns and traditions, when I talk about survival and deliverance, I'm talking about the things we do without thinking, the reactive habits, the emotional reflexes we inherited from the people who raised us, and the environments that shaped us. They feel natural only because they're familiar, not because they're healthy. Patterns are the visible parts of us that were formed before we even had a choice. Traditions are the beliefs we inherited, the rules, the rituals, this is just how we do it, that shaped our view of God, that shaped our view of ourselves and our place in the world. And some of those traditions, they did ground us, but others boxed us in, especially when fear was the root. These traditions reveal what we accepted long before we had the freedom, if you will, to question any of those things that was told to us. And this brings to mind one of the philosophers that I read about when I was in college, the philosopher Socrates. He was put on trial and sentenced to death because he challenged the accepted beliefs of his time. And he encouraged people, especially young people, to do the same, to question authority, to question traditions, to question what they were told to believe. And to the powerful ones, the ones who benefited from unquestioned loyalty, he was a threat. He was a disruptor. Someone who refused to follow blindly. So what did they do? They silenced him. They made him drink poison after they convicted him for the crime of critical thinking, which brings to mind the scripture that says they will kill you and think they do God a service. And that doesn't just mean a physical death, because that does happen, but it means killing your character, killing your influence uh, with other people, scandalizing your name, even to the point of lying on you. And how many times have you run into the Peter types? They pull the sword out because you dare be a Moses questioning the king, or you dare be a Paul or Socrates questioning church authority, questioning beliefs and traditions. Then there's survival, the part of us that learned to stay in our places because anything else felt unsafe. So we became people pleasers. We suppressed our voices just to get along, just to be a part of the club, just so we wouldn't get ostracized. It's the kind of faith that many practice because fear taught them that being good mattered more than being a whole person. It left them apologizing for who they are, trying to be someone that they're not. And that inauthenticity creates this barrier in relationships and it distorts trust. It affects how you love, how you live, and how you grow. Now we come to the deliverance part. And deliverance is when truth starts breaking up what fear has built inside of your psyche. It's when you stop performing for God and you start actually knowing God. It's unlearning, the releasing, the rebuilding that happens when fear is no longer running the show and your spirit is finally free. So when we look at PTSD, patterns, traditions, survival, and deliverance through a holistic lens, we see four layers of a spiritual and psychological journey. And herein lies the four stages that explain how people become who they are, why they believe what they believe, and what it takes to break free from what they were taught was biblical truth, but was really cultural conditioning. Each word speaks to a different part of the human experience, especially for those raised in church culture or faith like environments that shaped or was shaped by fear, that was shaped by duty, and was shaped by inherited expectations. You were told, this is what we believe, not because you studied it, but because everyone else did. So, what is fear? Fear is defined by Webster as an emotional response to a perceived threat, something that triggers anxiety or stress inside of you. On the other hand, reverence is a deep respect or awe. This conversation looks at the subtle and pervasive fear that many people don't even recognize, a fear that's so ingrained it becomes part of their personality. You see it in the traditions that's passed down for generations, the rules that a lot of us grew up with, the way we were taught to experience God as if He were sitting in the clouds waiting for us to slip up, instead of seeing Him like a loving parent, comforting teacher, sending you back out to try it again, knowing that you're going to fall again, but also knowing He's going to be right there to pick you up again. Sadly, this quiet fear becomes normal, and as adults, people accept it as part of faith, believing their worth is tied to their failures and that judgment is waiting right around the corner. Fear in the foundation doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like reverence. Sometimes it looks like obedience. Sometimes this is just how we do things. But underneath is pressure. Pressure to stay in line, not ask questions, not think too deeply, not step outside the boundaries. And when you grow up under that type of pressure, it doesn't just shape your behavior, it shapes your identity. It shapes who you are. It shapes how you see yourself, how you see God, how you interpret every spiritual experience that you have. Psychology calls this conditioning. Others may call it indoctrination. When you're repeatedly taught that love, acceptance, and safety are conditional, your nervous system learns to respond to God the same way it responds to danger, and not with this openness or this curiosity, but with caution, as if He's waiting for you to mess up so He can punish you, so He can wag the finger of shame at you, like so many people in the church do when you fail or when you slip and you fall, when you have sex out of wedlock, when you have a baby out of wedlock, when you do things that maybe scripturally is believed is sinful, right? And that's where many of us learn faith, not from relationship, but from survivalship. And how ludicrous to be trying to survive God. We were taught to love God. We were taught not to disappoint Him. We were taught to seek truth, but not in the way that was the right way to seek truth. We were taught to avoid punishment. We weren't taught to read the Bible for ourselves and to study to show ourselves worthy, a workman that need not be ashamed. Instead, we were always directed to listen to what the pastor said without question, because what the pastor or the church leader said was Bible. It was the end all, be all. And we were taught uh, to comply, to obey. We weren't taught to grow. And when fear is rooted in your core beliefs, you may not realize how much it influences the way you think and the way it dictates your actions. I see so many people on social media, they condemn everything. Everything. There was a young lady who had recently gotten married and had become pregnant, and she was glowing and she was happy and she was excited about carrying her child. And so, whenever you saw her videos, she was showing her little belly and she was so proud of that. And there were people that would come into her comment section, saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, went down, took them on by water baptism, and rose to walk in the newness of life kind of people that got in her comments and was condemning her, showing her belly, condemning how her and her husband was acting together on social media and being the proud mom and pops that they were about to be. All in the name of religion, all in the name of tradition. Last week, I shared how the tradition of women not wearing pants unfold in a Bible study. And let me share another moment with you. I was in the break room at work one day when a coworker walked in. Long skirt, long sleeves, hair pulled back, no makeup, no jewelry. For her, that was holiness. And during our interaction, the topic of women wearing pants came up. Yes, I started it. I started it again. And the conversation escalated quickly. Her voice rose, her tone sharpened, and she was responding she wasn't, I'm sorry, responding from study. She was responding from conditioning. And she had been taught a tradition, not a truth. Many who believe this way, they see fear as part of this spiritual maturity. And fear can make you think your righteous indignation is justified. You can become loyal to a tradition that leads to bondage instead of freedom, loyal to an idea instead of being loyal to the truth. And when you prioritize tradition over truth, you end up feeling torn, you feel confined by what you were taught, yet pulled toward what you know in your spirit to be real, to be true. That tension can make your spiritual identity feel fragile, like your worth is conditional. And any misstep that you do, anything that you do outside of that tradition, outside of that fear that has been put in you, could cost you God's love. How ludicrous is that? That's not identity, that's survival mode. And survival mode is not where God intends for you to live. When fear has shaped your beliefs, it's hard to feel close to God. You feel guilty for resting on a Sunday. You panic when you don't feel his presence. You worry like Elijah in the cave or Habakkuk questioning God's silence. But the issue may not be your faith. It may be the beliefs that you inherited. Now, I want you to understand this. This isn't about blaming the people who taught us or dishonoring the traditions we came from. But it is about telling the truth about what fear did to us, how it limited us, how it shaped our perception of who God is, and how it kept us from living fully. Once you can identify the fear, you can separate it from God. Once you can see it, you can stop confusing it with faith. Once you can acknowledge that it is fear, you can begin healing your perception of who you are and build on a solid foundation, a foundation that's rooted in unconditional love. That's it. That's all. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this early Wednesday morning or whenever you're tuned in. I hope something that was said today helps answer questions that you've been wrestling with. So share this episode, hit the like button, and subscribe. And please, please leave a comment. I really, really do read them. Meet me next Wednesday at 6 a.m. on YouTube and on Spotify as we continue this PTSD series, Patterns, Traditions, Survival, and Deliverance, where we'll be talking about shook but not studied, when emotions replaces understanding. And until then, get out there and conquer the world. And if not the world, conquer yourself. Can we do it?